Let's begin with the foundations. Welcome to another lecture. I am Professor Alexei, and today we will examine the UEFA Champions League, arguably the most visible recurring theater of club football on the planet. With me is Priyanka, whose questions are, as it were, a healthy antidote to professorial overconfidence.
Hi everyone. I guess we can start by thinking about what exactly the Champions League is and why it seems to, feel bigger than most things that happen on a random weeknight.
To frame our discussion, in lay terms, the UEFA Champions League is an annual tournament for Europe's best club teams, played alongside their domestic leagues. Unlike a National League season, in which everyone mostly plays everyone else at home and away, here the continent is stitched together into a single competition, producing a curated set of high-intensity matches that bring Real Madrid to play Manchester City on a Tuesday, or a champion from Portugal against a force from Germany on a Wednesday. It is, in fact, the most watched club football competition globally, with a dependable cadence that broadcasters adore and supporters plan their weeks around. In more technical terms, it is organized by UEFA, the continental governing body. The modern format employs a 36-team league phase. Each club plays 8 different opponents, 4 at home and 4 away, followed by a graded pathway into the knockouts, in which 24 teams advance. Qualification is governed by UEFA's coefficient system, which allocates more berths to higher-ranked national associations. The top 5 leagues provide 4 entrants by default, with additional access via the Europa League title holder place and seasonal European performance spots for associations that collectively excel. This yields a field mixing champions from smaller leagues with multiple elite sides from the strongest domestic ecosystems.
And the timing is kind of year-long, right? Like it starts in summer and ends in late spring?
Correct. Qualifiers begin in early July, and the final typically arrives in late May or early June. UEFA orchestrates scheduling to harmonize with domestic leagues and international windows. The presentation is also codified. We hear the Champions League anthem, composed by Tony Britton in 1992 as an adaptation of Handel, as teams line up and the starball flag unfurls. The ritual is not mere pageantry. It functions as a branding device that primes audience attention and signals that these minutes are premium cultural real estate. Moving forward, why does this matter? It is crucial to understand that winning or even advancing deeply in this competition materially alters a club's trajectory through direct prize money, broadcast-derived revenues, and global recognition that attracts sponsors and elite players. The Champions League is a talent escalator. Success compounds capacity to recruit, to invest in academies, and to professionalize operations. In simpler terms, Tuesday nights reshape Saturday afternoons for years.
It makes me wonder about the origin story. Like, there were earlier cross-border matches that people sometimes, dramatize as the first Champions League. Were those official at all?
Well, here we should be historically careful. Long before UEFA, there were exhibitions and regional cups. The 1895 Sunderland versus Heart of Midlothian match is often nicknamed a World Championship by later writers, but it was not an official continental competition. Experiments like the Mitropa Cup and the 1930 Coupe des Nations foreshadowed a true champions tournament. The actual European Champion Clubs Cup arrived in 1955, and formal governance turned a set of appetites into a stable architecture. Now, a few baseline facts. First, the Champions League is the most watched club football competition on earth. Only the FIFA World Cup and the UEFA European Championship surpass it overall. Second, Real Madrid are the most successful club with 15 titles, including the first 5 editions consecutively. Their modern three-peat in 2016 through 2018 reinforces the point that their name is almost an index entry under continental dominance.
And the two quick timeline anchors are 1955 for the launch as the European Cup and 1992 for the rebrand as the UEFA Champions League, with the anthem and the star ball, right?
Exactly. 1955-56 saw the first season with a knockout format. And in 1992, UEFA layered on a coherent visual and audio identity that transformed broadcasting value. From there, the architecture evolved toward multiple entrants from top associations, and today the 36-team league phase with 8 unique opponents. Before we get to the complexities, a brief personal note. I play chess poorly, but with the enthusiasm of a man convinced that a bishop on the long diagonal can fix his midfield press. Football at this level is an exercise in constrained optimization. Space, time, probability. A good press is a gambit. A rest-defense structure is your king safety. If the analogy helps you see both games more clearly, then, you see, it serves its pedagogical purpose. This brings us to 3 guiding questions for today. Historically, what did Real Madrid's early dominance do to the competition and to European club football? Counterfactually, what might have happened if UEFA had never allowed multiple entrants from the same nation in 1997-98? And in the present day, how does financial disparity shape competitive outcomes? And what mechanisms might rebalance the field? Let's start with the history. Real Madrid's 5 straight titles from 1956 to 1960 created 2 effects that scholars and practitioners still cite. First, a narrative anchor. Stars such as Alfredo Di Stefano and Ferenc Puskás turned midweek European nights into continental spectacles. The 1960 final, a 7-3 performance at Hampden Park, remains the highest-scoring final and an enduring advertisement for the product. Second, institutional gravity. Clubs and broadcasters realized that a cross-border club championship could command vast audiences and justify investment in travel, stadia, and later television production standards.
I'm curious about how other clubs reacted. Like, did they just try to copy Madrid? Or did they, invent counter ideas?
To elaborate, the response was diversification rather than imitation. After Madrid's initial reign, Benfica's rise with Eusebio signaled athleticism and transition play. AC Milan and later Inter Milan emphasized structure, with Helenio Herrera's Inter creating a disciplinarian counter-press and break model that contrasted sharply with romantic attacking play. Ajax then offered total football in the early 1970s, with positional interchangeability that became a coaching lodestar. Bayern Munich followed with a pragmatic, physically dominant template. English clubs in the late 1970s and early 1980s injected intensity and aerial strength. In other words, Madrid's hegemony did not freeze the ecosystem. It catalyzed competitive innovation across several domestic schools of thought.
So yeah, moving on. Does that mean the competition itself adapted its rules and formatting to keep pace with these styles?
We observe periodic procedural evolution. In 1970-71, for example, UEFA expanded the away goals rule and introduced penalty shootouts to resolve ties more decisively. Such clarity reshaped risk management in away legs. Much later, of course, the competition integrated group and then league phase elements to ensure more high-profile fixtures while preserving knockout jeopardy. The ecosystem co-evolved with tactics and with commerce, each feeding the other's feedback loops. Let's transition to another aspect, the counterfactual. Suppose UEFA had not allowed multiple entrants from top associations in 1997-98. A reasonable inference is that champions from smaller leagues might have enjoyed greater access to late stages, with more finals outside the Big Five leagues. We might have seen a trophy distribution closer to the late 1980s profile, where Porto, Steaua Bucuresti, PSV, and Red Star Belgrade could plausibly win. That said, fewer heavyweight clashes early and often would likely have reduced broadcast revenues, and by extension the prize pool that sustains professionalization across the pyramid.
I think the next thing we should talk about is balance. Did multiple entrants really concentrate power that much? Or did it just make for better matches for fans?
Both statements can be true. Allowing multiple entrants amplified sporting and commercial concentration in the wealthiest leagues, because several heavyweights from one nation could advance simultaneously, pushing knockout rounds into a constant super club gauntlet. Since the 1992 rebrand, only Porto and Ajax from outside the Big Five have reached the final. That scarcity is telling. Yet the policy also created more marquee ties, which stabilized and expanded global audiences. UEFA now uses coefficients and European performance spots to inject some dynamic access. For 2024-25, Bologna and Borussia Dortmund benefited from association performance, while Atalanta entered as Europa League title holders. These mechanisms are marginal correctives rather than reversals of the broader concentration trend. On to our next point, the present day and financial disparity. The top 5 associations field 4 default entrants. Their domestic broadcast rights and commercial ecosystems provide wage budgets and depth charts that most other leagues cannot match. The Champions League then reinforces this asymmetry. Deep runs yield more revenue, which strengthens scouting, analytics, and academy pipelines. Unsurprisingly, English clubs, Spanish clubs, and others from the Big Five have populated late stages with regularity over the past 2 decades.
Can we maybe now look at reforms? Like, is there a way to keep elite quality but reduce the gap? Salary caps, or more revenue sharing, or, something gentler like more performance spots?
It is worth noting that interventions have second-order effects. Hard caps are difficult across jurisdictions with different labor laws. Soft caps tied to revenues can entrench incumbents. Enhanced solidarity and merit bonuses for non-Big Five champions might widen pathways without diluting quality. The current league phase format already increases opponent variety, which distributes visibility to more clubs. Coupling that with targeted prize distributions could reduce volatility risk for smaller squads. Empirically, we need more research on how financial regulation affects competitive balance in multi-country leagues. Natural experiments from policy tweaks, such as the addition of European performance spots, will provide data. Meanwhile, the reality remains that strategic excellence still breaks through. Bayern's perfect 2019-20 campaign, and more recently Paris Saint-Germain's back-to-back titles in 2024-25 and 2025-26, demonstrate that sustained planning can master even a crowded elite field.
Isn't it interesting how a ritual like the anthem also kind of levels the stage psychologically? Like, smaller clubs still step into that same ceremony, which maybe narrows the intangible gap on the night.
Arguably, yes. Shared ceremony compresses perception. But over time, payroll depth and travel resilience reassert themselves. This is why UEFA's layered access pathways matter. A club like Atalanta, entering via the Europa League title, or an association boosted by an exceptional collective season, can recalibrate the bracket and occasionally the odds. It is a long tournament. Margins accrue. To summarize, the UEFA Champions League is UEFA's premier annual club competition, structured around a 36-team league phase and knockouts, and watched more widely than any other club tournament. We examined how Real Madrid's early dominance generated narrative gravity and tactical counter-movements. We considered the counterfactual of a champions-only pathway without multiple entrants, and we assessed contemporary financial disparities alongside modest policy levers that may rebalance access without sacrificing quality.
Maybe that's something we can come back to later. And if listeners want a closely related topic, the UEFA Europa League is kind of the second tier that still offers a path into the Champions League via the title holder spot. That was helpful to think through, actually.
This then completes our present analysis. Keep learning, keep asking clear questions, and if you will, never leave your midfield unprotected on a counter. Until next time.
Thank you, Professor.